bless you. So thank you everybody for coming out to the Spirit Room tonight. My name's Holly, I'm the gallery manager here. And you may have seen Dawn walking around. She's the lovely lady with the white hair. Dawn's our executive director. And tonight we get the honor of celebrating Birgit Pruess's exhibition, Science Inspired Art. I'm sure a lot of you had a moment to kind of wander around and see she's got a lot of really interesting wire wrapped pieces and beads and copper and all sorts of fun things to talk to us. So by all means, my dear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it almost makes me feel like in class here. Yeah, I'm glad you all came out here to look at my first ever solo show. So this is a special event of some sort, and it did take some amount of time to put that all together. But the idea was to find a way to bring science closer to people in a way that's not as intimidating. And at the same time bridge what some people perceive as a divide between sciences and art. So I believe in the STEAM movement. And I think it's kind of cool. So while I normally do nature photography, and that's how my art business started, it was mostly Naya vacation photos, and then I started to sell them. And a couple of years ago I got into the beads, and that was pretty much because of the bead shop down there. And started making trees of life. I mean, that was one of the first things. And earrings and all those kinds of things. And then it advanced to all those little things that you saw there, and there were quite a few that I made specifically for the show, like I'd never done math pieces. And this is actually mathematics. So the first one I want to show you is this thing here. Most things are still made from wire and beads, and sometimes, like here, a little bit of air-dry clay is involved, just to give it some stability. Some of the Tree of Life have that also. So this is an E. coli. I'm a microbiologist, so that's my favorite choice. What I'm working with in the lab, what Enas has been working with in the lab. And you may not know that, but there are viruses that kill bacteria. So you may think whether what you have is that a bacterium or a virus, but viruses can also affect bacteria, and it's a specific thing. So I mean, if it kills the bacterium, it won't harm us. But the principle is about the same. You have the bacterium here, it has flagella. They form a bundle and it rotates, and then it swims this way, and it has some receptors here on the side that can sense where it's swimming. It has a complex pathway that tells it what it has to do. This here is a virus. Viruses don't always look that way, but many of them have that shape. And the reason for that is it's highly effective. So we have those 6 legs, and they do have a protein that can help to bind. So it docks on here. And then it has DNA in the head that gets injected through the rod into the bacterium. And the bacterium then is dumb enough to make virus particles. Actually, it has no choice. That gets controlled by the virus. It also puts them together into new viruses, and once the viruses leave the cell, the whole thing takes about 20 minutes, and you have about 1,000 new viruses in a dead bacterium. So it's a highly effective process. It explains why viruses are so successful. It also explains why they will never become extinct. They can produce 1,000 more or less identical copies of themselves, and not all of them are going to be identical, and that's where the evolutionary advantage comes in. If something changes quickly, they can adapt in no time. E. coli needs 20 minutes to make 1 copy of itself, just as a comparison. Then we move to chemistry. I also have a degree in chemistry, not everybody knows that. This is dopamine. So if you think you don't have enough happiness in your life, that may be a good thing to add. And it actually works, because if you wear that, Karen has one, everybody's going to ask you, what is that? And then you have all these funny conversations that you wouldn't have otherwise. So it does actually work. It has an aromatic ring with 6 carbons. It has these guys here, there are 2 oxygens, that are the red ones, and there's a hydrogen here. And then there is a longer chain over there. And lately I started putting rocks in there. That's fairly new. And ideally I would like to have a hexagonal rock, but how do you find them? And I don't have these rock shapers at home, so I just use something that has an approximately round shape. Wrap my carbon, my aromatic ring around, hook the rest up on it, and then it looks a little bit different from the ones that I've done in the past. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, more sturdy. Keep moving on with rocks. The geology area is about rocks, and I've by now twice taken the lapidary workshop at the Plains Art and learned how to cut rocks. The downside is I don't have that equipment at home. That means knowing how to do it, that still doesn't mean I can actually do it. So I'm reliant on the rocks that I'm bringing home from the workshop. But I've noticed if I get a slab of rocks and I'm cutting one out, there are a whole lot of little fragments, and the rocks I have over there are kind of unique. I mean, that one is from the Blue Forest in Wyoming, and he claims there's no other place on earth where you get that particular rock. I forgot what this one was. So what I do once I have the rocks, and this is one of these pieces that was at the border of the others, it makes a very unique kind of shape. I've wrapped them for a long time, but last year started wrapping them in more interesting ways, and I came up with one other way to do that this year. But I've also started to electroform them, and that is what the copper pieces are that you see in the room. There's 3 pieces that have copper on them. One is 2 are rocks, and one is a seashell, and there's an actual seashell in there. And that's not that easy either. I had to figure out first how to do it. This one was made that way also. And now comes the real tough part. I asked my colleague and friend, Dr. N. Denton, what can we do for maths? Knowing N, she wasn't going to come with anything that's simple. So I had an infinity pen and a pi pen. Those are actually the kind of things that I can come up with. This is a Klein bottle that's a little bit more complicated. You also see a Möbius band in the room, which is a bracelet. It has one surface, but only one border, so you can move your finger around and you will end up in the spot where you started. That was relatively easy to put together. This is a Klein bottle. It's also a surface that, for whatever reason, is not defined. This one does not have any border. And in theory, if you cut that into half here, you should get one of those Möbius bands back out. And that takes a little bit of an imagination. I'm not willing to do that experiment. So putting this together was probably scientifically by far the most difficult one of the pieces. I mean, the chemistry, it's really only putting it together, right? You Google the dopamine, and then you see the ring and ammonia over there, and so that's, for somebody who studied chemistry, something one can do, but I'm not a mathematician. So this was definitely different, and I started here, came out here, and I had to hard time with that hole here, and then how am I supposed to know which wire to hook up with those? So Anne did actually have an impact on that. She also wants one. She's very keen on those now. She's making them, she's knitting them and filling them with candies, which is also nice because you can actually go through here, come out here, and do end up in that room. And if you want to get it back out, you just go in there and poke it out. And the knitted one obviously is a little bit more flexible than this one. And I think that's what I wanted to say. There's an immunology painting also, antibody attack. And there's something else. There are more biology examples, the trees of life in the 2D and the 3D versions, and a couple of birds and other figures. So I've shown most of you what the pieces are, so if you haven't seen it yet, take a look. Good. Thanks again for coming. And thank you for hosting this.
Okay.
And for giving me the opportunity. When I first time saw that room over there, I thought I would like to have an exhibit here sometime. It's a nice small room for pieces that don't fill up a lot of wall space.
Oh yeah, it's a great space. It's so well lit in here.
And it has very nice light. I mean, I really like the way the pieces look like in the light. That one on that thing, I mean, is really...
Yeah, it's like other
and that focus and with the light, and I mean, I could never decide whether I find it pretty or ugly, but that's not necessarily the point anyways. But it really looks good on the photos with the light.
Does anyone have questions?
What is the T4 virus?
T4 is this virus here. And that's just the name of a specific virus that infects E. coli only.
Oh, okay.
So,
Could that be a treatment for E. coli?
Viruses are being used for treatments these days, for all sorts of things. They can bring cancer drugs, cancer treatments in a cell. So, viruses are being used for treatments. For E. coli infections, I haven't necessarily heard that. If you have the infection in the intestine, that guy has to make it through the stomach first. I'm not sure he survives the acid. But viruses are these days being used to get drugs into cells.
so what inspired you into beading? You had said that you just got started because there's that bead shop, but
Yeah, I think it was Lance Vanderbush. I was sitting right next to him during several shows from the handmade market. And somehow we always ended up right next to each other. He makes dragons
I've
out
seen
of this
his work.
thicker kind of, and it was really very cool. And at that time I had nothing but earrings, and they don't involve a lot of wiring myself. It's more about buying pieces and putting them together. And he gave me the idea, I could do other things. And he has made me a little business card holder with E. coli and an Eiffel Tower to put earrings up on. So I have a couple of display pieces from
that's really
that
fun.
he custom made for me. And
Is he the wire guy?
yeah,
Yeah, I love him.
Very
he has a Facebook page under Wire Guy. And you know how art shows go if you sell it. You're sitting there for many hours and not much is happening. So it does give time for creativity, and start sniffing around and talking to others. And I've picked up things on shows. The rings were then something I picked up on some cork and canvas here. And at some point, there's always another YouTube movie.
Fun part.
If you look up wire wrapping rocks, there's a gazillion of ideas of what I can do.
I'm sure, and as far as the arts to get into, I'm sure that the cost to get started is less than, say, doing something like they're doing with all the oil paints.
I don't think this is $20 materials expenses. It's probably rather in the neighborhood of 12 or so.
Yeah, which is kind of the point.
This one might have been a little bit more, but not a lot. It's
probably
you need
more
a couple of
approachable.
tools at the beginning, but once you have everything set up and just need to buy a roll of wire for $6, at some point that gets you 10 of those. The
Wow.
expenses are fairly low, which also means I can sell them at prices that still justify the outreach argument that I want to reach people with it and
Yeah,
don't have to price them at ideas where people can't do it anymore.
that's gotta be the hardest part, is the pricing.
Yeah. It's mostly the time. It's making this takes maybe 40 minutes, so if you take my normal salary, I
Yeah.
wouldn't sell it for $20 anymore. But it is an outreach project.
That's nice though, sort of how I've always kind of felt about art too. It's nice to think that it's going into people's homes instead of just making.
And there is a small market for it.
Oh, yeah.
The people who like it are really excited about it, and some get a kick out of it and laugh about it, but that's the end of it. But, the people who have bought something always come back and say, hey, I got a lot of compliments on it and a lot of questions on it and so on. People do really wear it.
They're fun. I like them.
It's fun. It's unique.
Yeah.
You will definitely get questions.
I suppose that's what you kind of hope for though, huh?
Yeah.
Does
Any
anyone
other
else?
questions?
So how much is a rock cutter?
Oh, I think it's altogether about $3,000. And that is
Oh,
a
my goodness.
chainsaw to cut it into slices, and we only get it as slabs. And then you have these diamond wheels but you need them with different grain sizes. So you start with the rough one, so they can still shape the rock, and you get into polishing, and then it has to be finer and finer. So you have to have several on those, and they run under water, so that it doesn't get too hot, and you don't want to inhale the whatever's in the rock. I mean, you never know, there could be copper in it, or asbestos, or whatever, either. And in the end, you still need to polish it, and that's a rotating thing that has some tin oxide on it. So I think altogether what you said was about $3,000.
My gosh.
And it's not the kind of stuff, I mean, I don't have a studio. For these things I don't need to. For the nature photography I don't need to. And painting I can do in my basement. I wouldn't really have a space where I can do it. I think then it would get into the area where I would need a studio. And I think then I would really have to sell a little bit more, just so it carries itself.
Sounds like it's time to make a friend. Sounds like it's time to make friends.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, you can work with somebody. So I bought the stuff you need for the electroforming. That's a step up for me. And I do that in the kitchen, but I do it in a separate area so it doesn't get mixed with the food. So that's a step up, and that was some couple $100, I mean, of equipment or so. That wasn't that bad.
So you said for like the electroforming before that it's like you paint a chemical on it?
You have to paint some electroconducive paint on it first. Because it's like a battery. You want to have electricity flowing, electrons flowing. It needs to be conducive. And once that's dry, to hang it in a bath that is copper sulfate in sulfuric acid, like your car battery. And what's also in there is a coil with copper. So what happens is that you have the anode is a copper, I think. You put the red cable on there, and the black one goes. So as a mare, remember, if copper is red, so the red goes on red, and the black goes on the black adhesive paint. So I can't mix them up. And then you have electrons forming over, so the copper goes in solution on the copper coil, travels through the solution, and precipitates and goes back into copper, metallic copper on the piece. And then with time, you will see how from the top it starts forming. It's a slow process, and the slower the better, because if you do it too fast, it gets clumsy and doesn't get the nice shine and so. It may have to be polished a little bit in the end, at which point one can easily scrape some of it off and the black conducive paint comes back through. And you got to put it back in for another couple of hours. So it does the first ones, and they somehow recommended to start with an acorn.
Oh, interesting.
Which really isn't the best object for that. A, it swims. It doesn't sink, and it has to be submerged totally. B, if it has any kind of scratches, it will soak up the liquid and expand.
Oh, interesting.
And that builds cracks, and that doesn't work very well either. So the seashells are somewhat easier, and I think the rocks are easier. They're heavy enough, they go in immediately, the surface is very smooth, there are no, it's not porous or something, it doesn't have any cracks, so it completely soaks it up, and those go fairly fast.
Just trying to imagine this whole process, like, yeah, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, but it has copper in it and has acid in it, so it does need to be separate from food.
Now, right on the salad it goes. Well, does anyone else have any questions? Well, thank you, Birgit. That was wonderful.